written verbatim from the recording, is that correct?
For the public hearing, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, before I ask for a motion to approve, comments, corrections, additions?
There was so much in here that I could only check and see what I said. It just was pretty massive.
Okay. Was there anything in there that, in what you said that you need to make a change on?
Not that no. I think what I said was in there.
Okay. Any other additions, corrections, comments? Teresa?
Yeah, I had plenty of, I think a lot of what I said was somehow twisted or misstated or misrepresented, so, I mean, it's probably not worth the bother, but I mean, things that were said were not even making sense. Whistler states that the question is additive to the new sign being put up.
Yeah.
The whole comment was that the lights, in addition to the panel, were additive to the lights, you know, the lights.
Did I notice that you sent some comments to Greg that you would?
I did. And, you know, I can't clarify anything, I ask, I don't know. So there's a statement that says Whistler clarifies that the sign will most likely not remain. How do I know that? I
Okay.
wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I may have asked if it stays or comes down, I know I did, but there's a lot of stuff in here that misrepresents what I said.
So how do you want to handle that?
I don't know, Greg, would you want to make the corrections that I highlighted?
Yeah, I can correct it based on the comments you sent.
And then resubmit them to us?
Yeah,
Well, why don't we just approve them with the changes as noted?
Do you want to see what the changes are?
Not really. She knows what she says more than I remember what
Okay, that's fine. I'm just
she said.
just giving you the opportunity here. Everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Do you have any comments, Jeff?
No, I don't.
Susan?
Nope.
Okay, my only comment is this, that for me, the purpose of the minutes is to review the discussion and note any decisions or what have made. I think the verbatim, word for word, is just way too cumbersome, because even in here, I made some misstatements. I used feet instead of inches, because I misread the sign, and it's in here that Al said it was 16 feet. And then, well, then, you know, that doesn't need to be in there, does it?
I mean, probably not for the internal record, but it was part of the hearing. And so
Do we keep the verbal recording on record so that somebody wanted to go back, they could listen to it, or once you,
the recording stays online
forever?
forever, yeah.
Then I would, if the panel agrees with me, I'd like the minutes to be a summary of the discussion, the decision. If there was any objections or whatever, just say, objections was raised based on da-da-da-da-da, or you could say, but it doesn't have to, in my opinion, have to go word for word for word for word for word.
Just legally sufficient?
Huh?
Just go with the legally sufficient?
Yes.
I think, and part of that may be, there was, I know when we had the one up in the spires,
Yeah.
a lot of that was captured verbatim.
We can request that
Yeah.
later.
But that's not the default.
No.
What if we requested it at the beginning of a quasi judicial hearing and asked that those minutes be verbatim, because we think that hearing might need that? And other than that, we'll just leave it as a summary.
Yeah, but we don't know that until we get into it, do we?
No, I think legally sufficient is a term that defines what's there. And then at the end, you could just say, we want that verbatim.
If we go back and there's a controversy, discussion, challenge, then we can go back to the recorded one.
Okay. Jeremy, input, thoughts? Then I'll shut up.
No, I think that's good discussion. It's kind of just up to the planning board on how they want the meeting minutes, right? So as long as it reflects accurately the discussion, I don't think it needs to be word for word.
Jeff?
I don't have an issue necessarily with the summary. I guess I'm a little bit concerned if it's dealing with an approval process and quite a bit of discussion on the table in terms of pros and cons, and particularly if there's some dissent.
But that could be summarized, could it?
It could be, as long as it captured the rationale for what the issue was and what the summary of the,
I'm just trying to simplify this process, because this was a,
I agree, I don't know if it needs to be verbatim, but I just kind of wonder who just makes the decision on how much detail of the
But don't we-
discussion goes into it.
don't we do that when the minutes come, review it, and if there's something in there that's missing, that you bring that up or misrepresent it?
Or would we remember?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I remember that I didn't say, I want a picture. I was asking if there was a picture. I mean, it's just,
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I just seem like this verbatim is cumbersome and
Yeah.
time consuming, whether a summarizing of, what's the term, legally sufficient,
Legally sufficient.
is better. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Huh?
we're okay.
Noted.
Susan?
Well, my thought while reading it was a little bit different in that I'd like to see, I know this sounds silly, but we're all getting older day by day, which is a good thing. It's just that the print seems to be smaller than it needs to be. If the print were a little bit larger, we could read it faster. We could see it better.
Yeah.
Be more
John,
patient.
John, what do you think?
I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
with this format?
format.
Marie?
I prefer to have I'm on other boards where we just kind of have the essence of the comment, and your one comment means something totally different than if what the thought was behind it. I say to kind of keep it in a shorter format of what the gist of the topic at hand was, but to this, word for word stuff, no.
So you're legally sufficient. Sandy?
I'm legally sufficient.
Teresa?
what do we mean by legally sufficient?
Summary.
Summarize.
Summary sounds good, and with a valid point.
So I got 1, 2,
So if
3.
if we think something was left out, then we could comment on that.
Right.
If we know what legally sufficient means.
It's just,
That's what I mean.
already spent too much time on this.
Yeah, 10 minutes on it.
I guess my point is if it's an issue before the board that we're ruling on, and I just want to make sure that the essence of the discussion around the issues, particularly if it's a controversial one, is adequately documented. And one aspect of that, as long as there's a recording, we can go back to it and refer to it. If it's not captured in the summary, I'm okay with that. But for a meeting like tonight, yeah, I think just a summary of the discussion is appropriate. I don't think we need a verbatim minutes for
Okay, so
tonight.
do I need to have a motion, or I've taken a poll, and it sounds like this legally sufficient summary is, let's try that for moving forward.
Okay, so
Okay.
then amend these,
Sorry?
I move to, approve the minutes as amended.
Yeah. I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, roll call, please.
Gray,
Aye.
Conley,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Boise,
Yes,
Whistler,
Yes.
Di Benedetto,
Yes.
Bloomer.
Yes. Okay, then moving forward on their next series of minutes, we're just gonna do the summary. And if we have to change back, we can always change back, okay? All right, communications from the board, urban renewal, Jeff?
Pretty full meeting on Monday, and 3 presentations. Nick Gaddy from Beartooth Trails, made a presentation in terms of what they're pursuing for a pedestrian and biking path down Brewery Hill, requested funding from the Urban Renewal District to fund a portion, well, he was initially requesting funding of $24,000, and the Urban Renewal Agency recommended a 50% not to exceed $12,000 to help fund the feasibility study or represent the city's portion of the feasibility study. The balance would come from donated funds. Angela Getchell and Tom Fisher made a presentation on workforce housing and some potential low-income housing. One site was at the top of Brewery Hill that involves some city-owned property and potential land exchange for a piece of private land that's in the middle of that. And then also potential for city-owned property along Highway 212 as potential sites for low-income housing. And then also Beartooth RC&D presented some information about various grant programs that they have to help fund various initiatives, and one that they talked about was they can provide funding to help develop sort of community vision, goals, objectives, plan for various entities, and one of those that was discussed was developing sort of vision, goals, and objectives for the urban renewal district, and that would be kind of that the process is facilitated by a third party, and would be open for community-wide input and comment, and as part of that. So the agency decided to explore that a little bit more and maybe get some examples of what some other communities have done. Columbus apparently has gone through that process as one of the more local community, I guess. Lewistown was another one that they mentioned. And based on 2023 funds, there's currently $119,000 available in URD. That's it.
Any questions of Jeff? Yeah, Teresa.
Would there be, I guess I'm wondering, you probably don't know yet within URD what the approach would be to this third-party vision quest, I guess, the community vision. Would that be something URD would drive, or would it be like another committee or somehow another entity driving that?
I don't know for sure. I haven't really discussed it further. I guess my initial thoughts would be something the URA, Urban Renewal Agency, would sort of facilitate and drive, or oversee, since it's focused specifically on the Urban Renewal District.
Any other questions of Jeff? Hearing none. Sandy, City Council?
Things that actually affect our zoning is, apparently there is a list of things in our zoning that are contradictory to the city's ordinances.
Really?
And they're going to prepare a list for us. So I thought that was important. We were asking for short-term rental numbers to see where we are. And they're waiting actually for the number of residences so they can do their percentages. So we don't really have that, although they did say, that some have dropped out and some have added. So and frankly, in my 20 years in that business, that's what happens. Yeah. Some drop out and some add. So it gets to the point where it's going to probably be pretty level.
And they're getting those numbers off the software program we have?
No, the numbers that we need are how many homes we have, so they can do the math.
Okay.
And that's what they were waiting on. And obviously, we've had new builds in the last year.
Mhm.
So those are the, things that I think affect this board. There's a lot of other things going on.
And when will you think we get those numbers?
I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks,
Okay.
before our next meeting, as well as that list of, issues with our zoning,
Mhm.
that contradict the ordinances.
So our zoning is not consistent with ordinances, or ordinances aren't consistent with zoning?
Exactly,
So one of them's gonna have to change.
yeah. And it's not, probably not gonna be the ordinance.
Okay.
Unless they're older and haven't been updated by.
It just depends on, it just
Why haven't
depends.
we caught that before?
The first I heard of it was last night. So, do you know anything about it?
I remember the conversation on some subdivision stuff that was different. I don't remember the details. I think a lot of it had to do with camping, actually, is what it was. So I think it was whether camping is allowed on private property and what it is or isn't, and just.
So it's not a lot, it's just maybe.
We've actually,
There were specific actions that the council was looking, and as they were reviewing it and going back to zoning and questions came up, there was like, oh, they're different. And so they were compiling the list.
Well, to me, that's a red flag. We need to get that squared away. Particularly when we do our zoning review, we have a planning director that somebody's supposed to help us get out of that, but,
well, having the list will be very helpful.
yeah. Anything? Yeah.
But technically, our zoning is an ordinance, so there would have to be,
You're right, it's a legal
comparison.
document, you're right,
Yes.
yeah.
And it's adopted by ordinance. So to follow where I think Susan is going, if there are changes that are done, the updates would need to be recommended, and then they would need to be adopted by ordinance so that
Yeah.
everything is cohesive.
And when we do our zoning regulations, that's submitted to the council for adoption.
Mhm.
Okay, good point. Jeff?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in my mind, that would mean that our zoning regulations would take precedence over any
Yes.
city ordinance that's.
Any older.
Older one.
The ordinance should follow the zoning regulations.
They move straight into municipal code.
Well, I think the reality is sometimes contradictory laws exist, and when they're identified, they should be recommended.
Okay, well, good.
Sentence.
So that's not.
But we
hard.
did identify that there's nothing in zoning that prohibits camping on your own private property.
Yeah,
So, nothing in zoning, there's no ordinance that says you can't.
right.
That's a different thing, camping on city-owned land. That's definitely a no-no.
Jeremy, do you have an opinion on this?
On which part? On the camping part or the?
No, the zoning document versus a separate city ordinance. Which one supersedes the other?
I mean, I think I would have to get more information and then I could provide you with my input. Like, you know, what sections are we talking about? You know, again, it probably just depends on what it is. And whether or not the ordinance or the zoning needs to be changed. So,
Obviously, it's something we're gonna be doing. Anything else, Sandy?
Nope, that's the.
Marie, county.
Okay, and if, Bill, afterwards, if you want to expound on anything or update for me. A couple weeks ago, I went to the Commissioners Board meeting, and just a few things cooking right now. There are several subdivisions going on everywhere between Luther and Bridger, sounds like about 9 to 10. One was declined because it was very isolated near Cow Creek, correct? On the East Bench, there's about 3 subdivisions going on. All 3 of them are sold out. But what the guys said they're kind of running into is unhappy with where they bought. Maybe some people bought it sight unseen. So buyer beware, I guess. And too far out with the county maintenance. Let's see here. Airport, still waiting for the city to come forward with an interlocal, and then also updating growth policy and subdivision regulations. traffic info on county roads. So not sure what I wrote down there, but anything else?
Bill, you
So
want
that really
jump-
covers it. And I-
jump into some of this stuff?
You bet. Bill Bullock, County Commissioner, 900 Calumet Avenue. Yeah, Marie did a great job. That's exactly the conversation, and there was a subdivision recently turned down. Right now, I believe there's 6 more that are in queue before the end of the year for consideration. Going back to whether it's, I'll pick on the East Bench, for example. There's 3 major subdivisions up there that have been in place for probably a couple decades, as far as I can tell. They're full. That contemplation was never thought or planned out as far as infrastructure goes. And we're maxed out on maintenance. We can't handle anymore. And those are considerations going back and things we're looking at insofar as approval. The other part of it is those subdivisions that have been approved in antiquity that are now starting to show up as problems with how they were rolled out and what's being deemed acceptable. And going back to, there's no good, I guess for lack of a better word, enforcement or stick on the county end to make sure that things are taken care of. And that's a pretty big problem, but that goes back into our approval of the growth policy and planning and development regulations going forward. There's fixes to all of it, but I only offer this as a cautionary tale. What happens when everything's done, and then, you know, how to get in between the two and still have growth and development. You know, we can't avoid the one, but we have to do, and when I say we, I'm speaking on the county and exterior town. And our planning board does a great job. Their considerations are thoughtful and well put together, but, you know, looking at the other end of things, when the purchase is made and people have moved and they're in a spot, and every day is misery, because they can't get out in the winter, gets dusty in the summer, water's hard to get, and then, you know, the problem right now at the state level, insofar as regulatory agencies, the NRC, DEQ are not, I guess for lack of a better word, they don't have the appetite right now to pursue the things necessary, like unauthorized wells or drilling in places that weren't authorized. So I guess it's kind of a cautionary tale. I think you guys are going through the same thing. Your developments, your periphery, the additionals around town are full. We're just there, and it's gonna keep coming, and I don't think anybody wants to stop it. I don't wanna stop it. It's just making sure that those things that need to be taken care of are taken care of up front.
Any questions of Bill, Sandy?
Subdivisions generally go through the county and then go to the state level? Is that the order that they go?
So there's nothing more to the state than the water issues typically, and with your COSA and then the approvals of both your septics and your water source.
The reason I asked is that they passed something a year ago, July, that if a piece of land, let's say there's a 20-acre parcel and they want to break it into 4, you can only have 1 well on the 4. Like you said, that they don't have an appetite for more drilling, and so that they've stopped it so that you can only have 1 well on one piece. That if it was broken down before July of 2023, that one's fine, but after 2023, you can only have 1 well per piece of land, and if they want to subdivide, you still only get 1 well.
But have you
run into that?
leads to the bigger issue on the whole. There's still that case that came out of Broadwater County that's looming over the whole campus, where, you know, some of the guidance was stop all development. Well, that's not a reality. But the other side of that is the adjudication and allocation of water sources, specifically groundwater, is where the problem is. And hence their requirement or insertion that cisterns be mandated, but then the workaround of the cistern is put an ag well in, which is exempt from all of it. And that causes more problems because then you're drilling in marginal areas that were not approved for such. And so, I mean, it's a bigger question out there. You know, hopefully that gets resolved at some point, but that's the bigger issue lying underneath, because like to your example, the 4 pieces cut up, even if it was dedicated to have 1 well for the 4, there's nothing that would stop the other 3 from drilling their own and calling it a day.
Any other questions of Bill or Marie? Bill, you mentioned that the county planning is going through a review right now?
So as far as our growth policy
Growth
and
policy.
planning regulations,
Yeah.
yes, they're under review and up for consideration now.
Well, back when you and I talked about that, should there be any intercommunication between county and city on those things for some consistency, particularly in what I call the buffer zone?
I don't think it's a bad idea.
Typically, we do them separately, and I'm just wondering if at some point we should make sure there's some level of consistency between growth policy for county and growth policy for the city.
I think we should work together. I appreciate the new mayor's openness and availability. We talk a lot, one-on-one about one thing or another that end up in conversations, but I think it's a good idea, Al. Just going back to, and there's some augmentations and things we can insert to shore
Yeah.
things up. They're not big leaps, but it's definitely gonna be a change in
And
direction.
I'll talk to Maria about it, how and when we should do it, but I know in my tenure on the board, there's been a couple of issues where something happened just across the city line. And I just want to offer our willingness to participate or cooperate or share ideas so that there's some consistency.
No, yeah.
So you'll let us know, or Maria
Yeah.
will, or something, Teresa?
Al, I was gonna ask a similar question along those lines that, I wonder, I hear you saying about the problems. What is it the city can do? And what
Yeah.
sprang to my mind was the cooperation, collaboration on our growth policies and matching those up, especially among an interlocal type of a buffer area around the city where we might be able to help each other out.
And again, I'm open to it,
Yeah.
and again, I only offer this as a cautionary, you guys go through this stuff.
Yeah.
You're very in tune,
Yeah.
And the county planning board is too. It's just, like I said, it's a cautionary tale, take it for what it is.
Well, we can share experiences, maybe we can learn from each other, right?
Well, that, and even going back to your ordinance and
Yeah.
what you just
Yeah.
spoke about, everything that can be tested will be tested.
Yeah.
It's just what it will be, we're
Yeah.
in that level of the crucible right now.
So we'll work through Marie to figure out how to do that, or
You up
you?
for that, Marie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for that meeting. Yeah, let me know.
Now you're scaring me to death, what you said.
Oh,
No.
maybe Jeff should go with me just to make sure.
Or maybe we should just
Yeah.
have
Maybe we should all
a
just go.
joint planning
Yeah,
board
and not
meeting.
me. So,
Or we
okay,
have
one,
both planning
we'll have,
Oh.
we'll follow her lead and we'll make sure we have some representation there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
I think I just got cut. Okay, we're going on, no new business, we're going to old business. First item is, an update on the, downtown master plan. And Kevin, do you want to take the lead that and tell us where we are and what the plans are? Any more detail?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. So as you may know, we did set the invitation list for the focus groups. Thanks to Mayor Westwood helped out a ton on that. It's my understanding that the way that the meeting's going to go is it's going to be fairly similar to the Beartooth Forum, where it's going to be a kind of an open discussion that is going to be moderated by Jim Jarvis and Chad. They're both going to be there. But the way that it's going to go is during the course of that open discussion, we're going to set up boards, poster boards again, similar to what we did at the Beartooth Forum, and everybody's going to put up comments on there as the meeting progresses. And because it's open, people are free to come and go. Members of the public can show up, even though this is for the stakeholders. So be aware that there might be some people trickling in, but we'll just have to kind of play that by ear as the meeting goes on. But that's really all I got for right now.
Which room are we gonna be in? Are we gonna be in the big gym or the classroom?
That I'm not entirely sure. The last discussion that I had with Chad, it sounded like he was having some trouble getting everything booked, where he had thought he had booked it in advance, and then the Roosevelt Center reached out, and I think last week, and asked him if he would like to book the room. So I don't know which room it's gonna be in. I'll have to ask Chad. He didn't tell me that the last time we met, so we can figure that out tomorrow and I could shoot out an email.
Okay, Jeremy, do you have any comment?
I don't. I think we've gone back and forth on the agenda. I think the plan at this point looks good, so I don't really have anything to add.
Did you share with Kevin yet the kind of the idea that Jeff and I came up with as to the format? And I know you guys were gonna tweak that a little bit.
I have not shared it with him, Greg. I don't know if you did or not.
Maybe you can, moving on, you know, 'cause
Yeah, I think we're in.
the way the room is set up, that type of stuff, yeah, okay?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
come back to us next meeting. We got one more meeting before the, so that the planning board can see it and know what they're,
It's next
Looking at-
Thursday.
Yeah.
We've got-
huh?
It's next Thursday.
Oh, this is it then,
This is our last meeting prior.
okay. So you guys will figure out how to do that?
And once you figure out what room it is, let's make sure that when people walk in, they know whether to go right, left, upstairs, or which direction.
Right.
We will have a link that is available and posted online. Several of the business owners have reached out.
I've only seen 2 RSVPs, have you, one was from the, chamber, and they're sending somebody, and then the Beartooth, the human resources person couldn't go, we wrote them, and they're sending a substitute. So have you had what response on the RSVPs have you had?
So I don't have that information because they'd be going through Chad. So I'm not sure. I'd have to reach out to him once again tomorrow and find out. So we could provide that information in an email, or at least send it to Greg or Jeremy, and they could disseminate that to the board if need be. But I'm sorry, I just don't have that information.
My only suggestion is, based on the 2 that I were copied, is that one said they weren't available, and I wrote back and said, can you send a representative? And they found a representative. So I just want to make sure that the person you send it to, if they can't come, they're free to send another representative.
I can definitely relay that to Chad, and we can make sure that it's being sent to multiple people for the same stakeholder
Okay.
group.
All right. Any other comments, Jeff?
It's just, I don't know, I guess it just kind of dawned on me a little bit, there's gonna be a sign-up sheet for people that attend to kind of keep a record of who's participating.
That would be their.
I think that's a good idea. Did you hear that, Kevin?
I did, yep, and we can definitely do that. That's easy to do. I think we did that at the Beartooth Forum as well.
Okay. Susan?
I can't guarantee that everybody read it, but I am aware that the notice was sent out by the president of the Red Lodge Business Alliance
Yeah.
to all of the members.
Okay, good. Anything else? All right, then I'll leave this to you and Jeremy to work this out.
Okay.
What I sent you.
Yep.
Okay? All right, and if there are any changes or adjustments, would you send it so I can share it with everybody, so the board knows what's going on?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Anything else on downtown growth policy? All right,
Greg, just work with Kevin on that. I'm actually out of the office from Thursday through Tuesday next week, and then also at Mako conference in Missoula on Wednesday. So I'm not going to have much time between now and then to look anything over. I think, Greg, just work directly with Kevin on what Al and Jeff and us and we discussed, and just get that finalized.
okay,
Greg, could you also put Chad on all those as well?
Yep.
Could we all
Awesome,
get
thank
one
you.
of those? Could we all get this?
I just did it, so I'm sharing it out, but
Oh,
I'll
you
send
just
it.
now did it?
Yeah. And that was just a model, just something to talk from.
Angela, I see Angela from Red Lodge Area Community Foundation is on. Angela, do you know if somebody from the foundation plans to attend?
I think Brad is, but I'm not sure. I can check with him tomorrow. So,
Okay, thank
I
you.
met with Tracy the other day on another matter. She said she would have somebody there.
Okay, good.
yep. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on downtown? Okay, thanks, Kev. All right, Jeremy, we're gonna turn this over to you now on the, growth policy and how you wanna proceed through this, and
Okay,
we got the maps and we have the, amended, word, so.
okay, can everybody see my screen?
Zoom in.
Can everybody see the screen?
We can see that there is a screen. We can't make out that the characters are in English yet. Needs to zoom a bit.
Marie's going for her
I need to get
glasses.
some glasses.
All right, I forgot to zoom in like we did last time. Here, let me get this.
Does that look okay?
Yeah,
More?
good.
Pretty much like the form, right?
More would be good. Double that.
Okay, where are we gonna start, on page
More.
18?
35.
All right, so I think, well, the first thing we were gonna do was we kind of skipped over, I guess the sections on housing and some of the other information sections. But what we wanted to do tonight, before we get started on future land use, is Jeff had some specific comments that he wanted to address on some bigger items. And so I wanted to, I guess, have Jeff ask those questions, and let's get those ironed out first before we jump into those, before we jump into the future land use discussion.
Okay,
So
Jeff?
I guess I would turn it over to Jeff, and Jeff, can you elaborate on your questions in the sections previous to the land use section?
Oh, yeah, I can, I think we ended up, we're gonna start, where we ended was on page 17, I guess, and so, the section population characteristics and economy, starting page 18, I just had some comments, but I think that was, it looked like by Kevin's comment that was covered. So the next one was on page 19, and basically, I guess I was suggesting beefing up the section that addresses the aging population a little bit, and maybe bring in information in that was presented at the Beartooth Forum last fall on aging in place. There, at least checking with Brad Canton on some of the data that he has, and maybe that would be worth inserting or incorporating into that section. And my comment is primarily related to the paragraph that says, like many other Montana communities, an aging population and a continued decrease in the number of younger residents is something. And so my comment was kind of in reference to that, to sort of beef up the discussion about the aging population and services available to that population.
Kevin, do you have that? Do you understand what he's wanting there? You're muted.
I kind of missed a little bit of that. I was sending a message on here.
So Jeff's comments here are on page 19, excuse me, under population section. He wants additional information added in here on aging population. This was his comment.
Yeah, I could probably find more information on that. Do you want me specifically talking to to Brad, I had talked to him a little bit, prior to like the very first draft. I can get a little bit more information. I could also pull more information from the census data if that's what you'd like. But is there a specific that you're kind of looking for?
Well, he had some interesting data that showed what the trend line was in terms of the change in the population over the next number of years, and I guess that's kind of what I was referring to. And he was kind of relating it to the fact that in future years, there's likely to be a disconnect between the services available to the aging population versus the population itself. And that was kind of it, especially since we have, lost 2 assisted living facilities in the community. So I was just basically I guess my suggestion is to visit with him and ask him what he thinks might be appropriate for incorporation into that section. And maybe having a subsection in there that says, aging in place, just to highlight that idea.
Okay, you understand that, Kevin?
Yeah. And like I said, I've talked to Brad a little bit, so I definitely could reach out and get a little bit more information, and hopefully we can get that hammered out.
Anybody on the board
No,
have any?
I just noted it in the comments, the Red Lodge Area Community Foundation, what's the word I'm looking for? The letters there, it's not correct.
RLACF?
What's that?
You have RLCF for Red Lodge Community Foundation.
It's just missing an F.
It's RLA,
ACF.
Red Lodge Area ACF.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
Okay, so, but that's not in the document.
Oh.
Okay,
I meant Red Lodge Area Community
Yep.
Foundation.
okay.
Do you wanna maybe, expound on the, I see what you're saying, but the disconnect, but maybe some clarification on that? As far as do you think we need more clarification on that?
What's that?
Clarification on the disconnect between the aging
Well, what
population?
he was showing was some information that basically showed as we move forward in time in the community, the proportion of basically people over 60, 65 is going to increase and be, I can't recall if it was actually going to be a dominant component of the population, but it's going to be a significant proportion of the population. And at the same time, the potential for the services to address that population was decreased. And the example is the closing of the 2
Oh, I see.
assisted living facilities. So the idea was to try to facilitate people's ability to stay and age in their own homes rather than rely on something like an assisted living facility.
So Kevin, I think, go ahead and add a section into this, maybe right at the end, that talks about aging in place or aging population, something like that. And let's get some more additional data added in here and discussion on how that affects the city of Red Lodge.
And do.
Okay, we good there?
Okay, moving on, Jeff.
I think the next one was just a question, so I don't know if it was on page 23.
On page 23?
And figure 8. And I guess I just found it interesting that there was a decrease in the arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodation, and food services from 20% to 13% between 2013 to 17 period, it was 20%, and then the 2018 to 22%, it dropped to 13% of
It just seems unlikely.
What page is it?
what's that?
It just seems unlikely that it dropped that much.
Well, that was my question. But I guess that's just the question to you, Kevin. I'm not saying what that number should be or if
This
it
is
should be
here.
different, but.
20, and now it's 13.
Looking at it, so you can see that we have two different NACIS codes in there, and I'm wondering if I need to split them, because like you can see 71 is for the arts and entertainment and 92 for food services. So it's a mix between both of those codes. So I probably should split them, and it probably will change the amount quite a bit.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'm
Kevin's
not tracking, where did you see the 71% you said?
It was 20, it was, figure 8.
I got figure 8, entertainment, recreation.
Yeah, it's the second item in the table where it says, for 2013 to 2017, then the figure is 20.1%, and then for the period 2018 to 2022, it's 13%, so,
And that was in arts and entertainment,
yeah.
Well, it's also accommodation and food services.
yeah.
And I doubt very much that there's been that significant, yeah, I think they do need to be broken out. Accommodation should be broken out as well as food service, and accommodation should include short-term rentals, not just hotels and motels.
Well, I don't know if you're gonna get that. There's one code for accommodation and food service, so I don't know that there is a separate code out there that splits those two up. But Kevin, can you look into that and see what you can maybe find?
I can definitely do that. I know that those NACIS codes have subcategories, but you can really, I mean, if we're starting to put a bunch of those in there, that table's going to be massive. So I'll look into it a little bit more and see if there's ways that we can split it to more accurately show those percentages.
Is that construction number right, you think? If these numbers are right, we're in trouble.
But, yeah, the construction number drops quite a bit too.
And we know that that's not right.
Agriculture, forestry, all of the trades down, like, wow. If these
What's the
numbers
source
are
of this
right-
information, Jeremy, for Kevin?
Don't worry though, we got.
It's census data. It's the American Community Survey 5-year estimates from the US Census Department. So, I mean, a lot of this information is
Yeah.
it's an estimate, right? They're not polling every single business in Red Lodge, right? They're sampling businesses in Red Lodge. So depending on how they're sampling businesses in the city of Red Lodge could skew this data a little bit. So
I'm hoping that they just went up and down Main Street, because that's what it looks like, because these numbers are either
Yeah.
hopefully skewed or, yeah.
I'm also.
Susan, go
wondering
ahead. Yeah.
if, considering the timeframes involved, if there could have been some effect on some of those numbers due to the effects of COVID.
Do you hear that, Kevin?
I couldn't hear all of that.
The impact of COVID on these numbers,
Probably.
the pandemic.
It's a 5-year spread, and
Well,
2020 at the
And
end
I
of it.
think also keep in mind that, you have the first two columns are within the city of Red Lodge, right? And then you
Yeah.
have the third column as Carbon County. So when you're thinking about businesses, right, there's a split. You have a certain segment that's in the city, and you have a certain segment that's in Carbon County that is, it feels like it's actually in the city of Red Lodge, but they're not actually in the city of Red Lodge, right? They're in the county. So as you can see, these construction numbers for Carbon County are pretty steady, versus in the city of Red Lodge. So I just want to point, same thing with education, right? So these numbers are, retail. So I get that might be part of it, is that, you're thinking the wider maybe planning area boundary of the city of Red Lodge, and with some of that stuff being, maybe a lot of the building was actually occurring in the county and not in the city. you know, or those types of things. So just keep that in mind too.
So your thought is maybe the producers actually, you know, left the city and branched out and relocated into the county type of scenario?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be part of it, but also understand that this is an estimate from the US Census Bureau. It's not, they didn't go out and talk to every single business and every single resident and right? They sampled, you know, and then they project or based on their formulas, right? They make estimates, based on those, sampled data.
Well, based on the recent conversation, then, when you first look at these numbers, it looks pretty pessimistic, but then as you go into your explanation, it's a little better. Should we write a paragraph in here of that type of explanation so people understand what they're reading here?
I think that's definitely something that would definitely help. I agree. So Kevin,
So-
let's add a discussion after table 8 that kind of describes what we're looking at here and how this data has been, you know, received, and then you know, kind of that idea that, you know, we got the city of Red Lodge and we got Carbon County. They're two separate entities, that sort of thing. So yeah, if you could add that discussion in after or before figure 8, I think that would help a lot.
Al?
Yeah, Sandy?
The problem I'm having, and I think Jeff had, and we can go through this whole thing, is this is very misleading. I would rather not see this at all. The idea that construction dropped from 10.9% to 2.7 is just wrong. I'm in real estate. I can tell you that the golf course boomed during this period.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely boomed. And Spires, which is also in the city limits, and Woodlands. Well, okay, they're not in the city limits, but those two subdivisions specifically really boomed from 2018 to 2022.
Well, as we know, the federal government never lies.
And how about Aspen Basin?
Yeah, well, that's 22, so that's kind of after.
Okay.
I just think this whole thing is misleading.
Yeah.
Just the way it's all lumped together, it presents Red Lodge as a declining community, and we're not.
Good point.
Yeah.
I mean, and we can certainly, I think, it's certainly not helpful.
No.
Maybe it would be better, you know, I don't know. You know, I could talk to Kevin, and let's see if between the two of us, maybe we can come up with a write-up instead of this table. Maybe we can come up with some kind of a write-up or something. And you know, this one up here seems to be a lot. I like this graphic because it kind of splits out what the industries are for Red Lodge, but it doesn't really talk about, you know, it gives you what, you know, what your cross section is of your industries within Red Lodge. Yeah, I don't know. Let's
Hang
Kevin
on,
and
I
I.
got a question.
I think
Hang
Kevin
on.
and I can work through this.
Question from Teresa.
So I just want to ask if this is a standard and something, a set of data that most everybody at other cities go by, or if we could use something like the Beartooth RC&D data. They probably even have better data than this.
This is hard.
Together with the chamber and the business community, there has to be a lot more accurate data.
I'm wondering too, if comparison of building permits from one year to the next might shed a little more light on the construction data.
Okay, Jeremy, I guess you see what the issue is here. Why don't you and Kevin or Chad or whomever try to work this out and come up with a better idea?
Yeah, I like the idea of the building permits, and then maybe getting with RC&D and Beartooth RC&D and talking to them a little bit more about the actual businesses and business growth. I think that would be better local data than what we can get from the census. I would agree with that assessment. So
Yeah.
Kevin and I and Greg will work on that and we'll get this fixed.
Okay,
You also, on that pie chart, might as well take off farming, fishing, and forestry. If it's 0%, then we don't really need that on
Good
there.
point. Good point. Yep.
The city thing.
It's not a city, apparently it's 0%.
yeah. Okay, it just troubles me if that's a census in there that, but I agree with Sandy, I mean, just going around the city, it doesn't look like we're down, it looks like we're up, so,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, and there
Yeah.
are some parts that are up, like manufacturing shows it's up, right?
yeah,
So you do have
Yeah.
that. So I think, I think what we should do is try to get some local data and building permit information and compare that to what we're seeing in the table to kind of verify. And if we're,
all right,
if we're not coming up with good, if this table isn't accurately representing what is occurring in some of these sectors, then I think we need to take them out and provide that local data.
okay. Okay, we move on then, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Gilby's, everybody else is commenting,
Yeah.
go and get an idea what the building permits, how to give a pretty accurate estimate of what the current construction is.
Do you have any other changes you wanna make?
No, that's all I had until we get to page 31, which is, I think, where we're gonna start.
All right, anybody else have any comments? Yeah, it's Teresa.
Sorry. Yeah, but I haven't submitted them, and I'd be happy to do that, but, the two high points that I wanted to make comment on, and I'll submit for discussion around annexation as well as,
What page are we on?
page 10.
Oh,
We don't have to go there right now,
Okay.
but, I thought we were gonna go back later, at a later date.
We are gonna
to
go
the
back later.
previous, so I'm happy to park it until then.
Park
but
it till then,
It's
yeah.
about annexation, climate, action plan, which was
Yeah.
raised, one of the dominant,
Yeah.
desires out of the Forum for Growth Policy was to have a climate action plan.
Yeah.
We haven't addressed it
Yeah,
anywhere.
what I wanna do is get through all this once, and then have them redo it, and then we'll go through it again.
Okay,
All right, anybody else? All right, Jeremy, where do you wanna go from here?
Okay, I think our next section is land use, and I think the first part of this really talks about just existing land use. Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but the existing land use is in the first part of this, and looks like there was just a few comments from Jeff in here, which we can work with Kevin to get those addressed. What I would really like to focus on tonight is the next critical piece of a growth policy is the future land use map. So we're on page 36. There's some discussion on future or on land use designations. Basically, it looks like this was kind of taken from the existing zoning that Red Lodge has. My preference, and this is my preference, I don't necessarily like to dial these in this hard on a future land use map, just because it kind of it really locks you in to these, especially on the residential side, right? It locks you into low density versus high density versus medium density residential. But that being said, I have developed, I did go ahead and kind of put together what I see as a future land use map within the planning area boundary, and I just did this right before the meeting, so I did not have an opportunity to send it out to everybody, but we'll zoom into different areas. And but basically this is what we want to do, and hopefully everybody can see this on their screen, and I can zoom in. But essentially what we want to do is we want to identify where we want things within the planning area boundary, and then any changes we want within the city boundary as well, right? So that's what the goal of this future land use map is. And this is what we measure against for future annexations and subdivisions and zoning requests, right? And so all of those things have to be in compliance with the growth policy. And so if you don't have these things identified on a future land use map, say somebody comes in and wants annexation and subdivision review, and you haven't identified in your growth policy what your vision for that area is, then you essentially have to amend your growth policy at the same time that you go through the process of doing the annexation, subdivision review, and zoning map amendments, so that they're all in compliance together. And so the idea here is that, well, let's put some forethought and planning into what we want to see in the planning area boundary and within the city limits, so that when these things come up, we've already kind of thought about this, right? And so I kind of took a stab at this, and you guys know your community and the area way better than me. So, but I kind of looked at what the existing land uses are in these areas, and that's kind of where I started. And so, as we can see, like, as you can see down in this area, obviously there's a lot of large lot residential development in this area. So the green is my idea of low density residential. And it kind of follows what's already occurring in that area. And so that's kind of the way I've put this, with kind of a commercial corridor along the highway. And then out from there, we've got a lot of open space and ag in these areas. And so the blue is open space, agricultural land use. And then as we go north, I kind of started looking at a little bit of, okay, where do we want some high density residential? I know we've got utilities run out to the golf course and in the spires out here. It seems like this is an appropriate place to maybe plan for some high density residential, along with maybe in this area, as well as this is the lot I think we've been talking about for that the city would do an RFP on for a high density residential development. And then out from there, just next to that, planning some medium density residential a little further out. And then these are just, again, there's already existing low density, large lot development in these areas, and then some open space and ag. And so that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of my first stab at this, just to provide some guidance, I guess, for the planning board. So you have somewhere to go with this. And I guess with that, why don't we start on the south end, and I will open it up for discussion. The other option is I send this to everybody, you guys think about it, and then we come back at the next meeting with your ideas.
What's your preference, Teresa?
Gail, I need some context here. I know this, it's based on what's out there today and where we think the direction should be, but what relevance is this planning area if we don't have the county on board with agreeing that we have a planning area in common?
He says that it had to be part of it by the state regs.
Well,
And
so
we
the planning area boundary is a 1 mile buffer around the existing city limits. So that's the defined planning area boundary that we use for our growth policy development for cities.
And
This is the area that you don't have any jurisdiction within this area, right? This is county jurisdiction. So you're not zoning this, right? This is not you saying we're going to go out here and zone everybody with these land uses. That's not what we're doing. This is just a planning effort so that as the city grows, you have a plan in place for what you want the city to grow and look like. Does that make sense? So yes, there is coordination with the county. Also, the county is required to send any subdivision applications that are within a mile of the city of Red Lodge to the city for comment. And so the county could also use this future land use map as part of their process, and the city could use this land use map as to provide comments to the county on any subdivision applications that might come in as part of a county application. Does that help clarify?
Teresa?
It does help clarify, but at the same time, the county is creating subdivisions which are commercial where you show we would desire residential. So we don't have a say in, we're coming up from behind on this. It would be wonderful if we could get the county to collaborate on this together with us to say, yeah, this makes
Yeah.
sense. And, you know, otherwise, I'm not really sure that this is, anything is gonna hold water at all.
Well, I
Okay.
think this goes along with your coordination comments previously, right, when you were talking to the county commissioner. I think we got to start somewhere. And I think you this is your growth policy as the city of Red Lodge. And so I think you guys need to work on, you know, what your vision is. And then once you have that, then I think it's totally appropriate to provide this to the county planning board and county commissioners for comment, right? And get their input on what you guys see for the future of Red Lodge and the planning area.
So optimistically, this opens the door for collaboration.
Yeah.
And that's
Correct.
it.
Correct. That's the idea is, right? This is the area around the city of Red Lodge that we want to try to collectively plan with the county for future development.
Marie, go ahead.
Being the county rep, that's all great in a perfect world, and I totally see what you're saying, but the county will laugh you right out of the room.
Really?
And again, this is not
I don't think
zoning.
they're going to be up for Red Lodge dictating,
It's not
the
dictating.
buffer.
Let's say it's not dictating, it's desired. We have
You're not
planning-
dictating anything. This,
Right.
the growth policy is just that. It's a policy. It's not a regulation. You are not implementing zoning with this map. All you're doing is planning. That's all you're doing. All you're doing is saying, look, we want to look at the future of what the Red Lodge looks like 20 years, 30 years, whatever from now, right? And Red Lodge is going to grow. It's going to expand. It's going to happen. So we want to actively plan for this, right? And I mean, if you don't want to do a future land use map out this far, a mile, then that's fine. Typically our planning area boundary is a mile around the city limits. And so, but if you want to shrink this down to a half mile, that's up to you guys. This is your document.
Well,
I would
the map
recommend that you do something.
the map you've drawn looks like it's 2 miles out. If you look at the,
No, one.
if you look at the, scale at the bottom, it looks like you went 2 miles out.
One on each side, one in each direction, right? It's a buffer.
Is it 2 miles, Kevin, or did you do a mile? Guess I didn't
It is.
double check that.
This one, let me get to it.
It looks like
I believe it was supposed to be a mile, but if our GIS guy did it too, then we can get that
It
fixed.
look-
But it really shouldn't dictate the land use designations that much, though. For the purpose of this conversation, we can get it fixed if it is too. But
I would say this, that I'd bring it in so it is a mile and not the 2 miles. I would do that first. Sandy?
I'm really familiar with a lot of this, like at the south end, you see a lot of 20-acre parcels that are Ron Wolf's, that I could see that somewhere in the future, way out there, that they might get annexed into the city. Remington Ranch to the east of the city, another one that we are already providing sewer to. I could see that as a future land use. That makes sense to me. To the north, along 2 Mile Bridge Road, you've got woodlands that we are providing sewer to as well, that has agreed to be annexed in if we so choose. So a lot of these that are adjacent to the city limits could and have already agreed to be annexed in. But this goes out way too far, to say the least. A lot of this, especially when you look at 308 and that whole area there, most of that is actually owned by Sinclair Oil. So the idea that we would even think of that as a future land use is totally not gonna happen. So I think that you need to draw this by the smaller parcels that you see here. Along Highway 78 is a big maybe, but when we annex something, it has to be adjacent to the city line, correct?
Well, it does, but you know, as you annex one property, right, the next property becomes adjacent and that one will have service, right? So you could, you know, essentially annex in blocks as you go out. So I put a block on the map. Does that look like a more appropriate planning area boundary for the future?
Yeah.
land use map?
Yeah.
That looks like it's more to the scale of a mile.
And you might actually wanna move it up a bit. I mean, just as an idea, because you've got, Remington Ranch to the east and Woodlands to the north. So those should definitely be included.
So like that?
From what I can see, yes. And probably more to the left.
Or you could just use the GIS tool itself to buffer the mile, just say one.
Anyway,
one mile.
I think that is better than what this is.
Well,
would
and again,
move-
and this is just this was a first crack at it, right? So this is all
Right.
great. That's why we wanted to get this in front of you guys to start this discussion, because this is just a first, you know, just a first look at it.
Right.
So,
Right.
why don't we?
I would try to stick to the 1 mile, except with the exceptions that Sandy just mentioned. Jeff?
Actually, right now, I think we ought to, right now, I'm okay with the way it's drawn. Yeah.
With the 2 miles?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's certainly room for adjusting the line, especially to the east,
Yeah.
given the terrain and how that breaks off into the Clarksport Valley and stuff, but I think, Jeremy made a good point, is don't think about development in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Think about the next 10 to 20 years.
Mhm.
And think about where the growth is going, and you can see that the majority of the growth is actually going west towards the mountains
Correct.
and towards the national forest, and it's extending to the south along and to the north along Rock Creek.
Along the Rock Creek corridor, exactly.
So I think we need to kind of think a little bit broader than just trying to hone in on thinking about what are the potential pieces that could be annexed. I mean, that's important to keep that in mind, but I think also looking out a little bit beyond that in terms of, and at least being able to go to the county planning board and saying, here's where we think growth is gonna occur over the next 10, 15 years or so, and here's how we, as a city, because that city boundary is likely to change.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna be confined to that. And there's issues that, to me, that are gonna come up in terms of how are you gonna extend infrastructure? How are you gonna extend water and sewer services? Who's gonna pay for emergency services? How is all that gonna be factored into how this future land uses, how we wanna designate future land use? And where's the income gonna come for providing, for supporting those additional services? So right now, I'm okay with thinking broad rather than trying to narrow the focus down. And we've seen what kind of growth has occurred just in the last 2, 3, 4 years. If it continues at that rate,
Mhm.
you know, there's gonna be a lot more development beyond 1 mile.
Would you agree with this, though, that he put a dotted line, or some kind of indicator in there of where the 1 mile buffer is on that map?
Yeah, but I wouldn't call that, right now, I wouldn't be comfortable calling that the future land use
No,
area.
just to help
No,
with
the
scale.
future,
Just
the
to-
future
But-
land use is the bigger map, but for reference, because of the 1 mile, I'm gonna call it a buffer for lack of anything else, it should be indicated on that map, or should it not?
It might be helpful as a measure tool, but I think
Yeah,
to Jeff's point, what I like is that the area that we designate as this
Yeah.
planning area, larger planning area boundary, should consider the impacts, and we haven't even listed the criteria that we'd be looking at to see what do we really need to include in that planning area.
right.
Well, and this
So-
helps you, this helps you plan for infrastructure too, right? So there's multiple things here that this helps you with. Like if you,
Right.
right, and keep in mind, you guys will come up with the first stab at this future land use map, right? As you go through the public process of public comment and review, and the county provides input and different people provide input, this is probably gonna change, right? But you at least need to start with something to show
Right.
people. And this then allows your public works department to plan for future infrastructure, right?
Right.
Based on high density, medium density, like, right? I mean, I think this is just this is a very important piece of a growth policies to have this future land use map and planning for growth within that planning area boundary. This does not mean by any means that this whole area is going to be within the city of Red Lodge, or that it's going to be zoned or anything like that, right? This is not a zoning map. This is just simply talking about what the city of Red Lodge envisions for the future for land uses in these areas. And it's going
Right.
to change, right? This is a fluid document. It's supposed to change. You're supposed to review this at least every 5 years, if not more, and make updates as necessary. So in 5 years, depending on what happens, right? This could be this, you could look at this and be like, oh, well, we were way off on that, right? Or or we were right on. You know, you just don't know.
Okay, let's do this. If you could put that dotted line in that indicates the 1 mile buffer from the current city boundary, just as a dotted line of reference, and leave the outline the way you did, and then give us a copy that we can look over. And I think at what point do we share this with the county to say, this is just our starting point? We don't want to say we're dictating or anything like that. We're saying, hey, we want your input on this. Do we do that sooner rather than later, or what? When do we do that?
I would rather get the planning board's comments incorporated into this and then start that collaboration. That's
All right.
my feeling. But I
Okay.
certainly would defer to you guys if you want to start that process sooner rather than later.
May I ask a really dumb question? If we have no power over this, then why are we trying to dictate it? Like my subdivision is even within the mile out, I guess. I always thought it was 2 miles out, but okay, so if somebody builds a home in my subdivision and we're all on a well and it would be, what is the setup there? It's not what the truth is, it's what people believe too. So, you know, we've had lots of uproars in here over people missing what really the actual point is. What are we trying to accomplish here, I guess, with this? I guess maybe I'd understand it better if I,
Again, it's
but we have no control over.
No, but you can talk, right? We could say, hey, look, this makes sense to have residential growth here because there's water resource, there's easier, ingress and egress and services that we could tie in. It's just something to help us look at growth, right? And where we might be going together with the county, or in addition of, for annexations or subdivisions or whatever. But I get it. It's something that we can look at together and say, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Just start the discussion or hold a discussion.
And I can tell you right now, the way that planning is going in Montana, it's already started that municipalities, at some point, all municipalities are going to be required to do what we call a land use plan. And it's basically a super hybrid growth policy. And where it's even more in-depth than this on future land use. And you have to do it within the planning area boundary. Right now, it's only dictated that the large cities do it. It's kind of more of an experiment at this point. But I suspect within the next few legislatures, it may be widespread that all municipalities do a land use plan. And what that means is that the planning process for development within that planning area boundary, when you develop this land use plan and you've developed your densities and in future land uses for those areas, what it does is that planning process for subdivisions now becomes more of an administrative review rather than a big drawn out planning board, city council review process. And so it's, we have it already. It's only dictated for the large cities, populations over 5,000. I could see that happening relatively soon. I would say within the next 5 years, 6 years, maybe, that gets rolled out to every municipality. And so it's going to be a requirement that you do this. And so I'm just giving you kind of the future of what planning in Montana, and this is what states all over the country do. And Montana is kind of just trying to catch up. So that's just one other piece. I mean, to get to your point, this has no control. Like the growth policy is not a control document. It's not a regulation. It's simply a planning tool, right? And so just because we designate something as low density residential on this future land use map does not mean that we're going to go out there and zone that low density residential or anything like that. We're looking at what the current land use is and what the expected future land use of that might be with the availability of city services, access, all those things, right? And so it's just a planning tool. And that's where a lot of the public usually, and I'll tell you right now, the public generally, this is where they're going to get bogged down in is this future land use map, because there's going to be a couple people that are going to say, oh, you're trying to zone me, you're trying to annex me into the city, and that's not what this is. It's not what this is at all.
It just seems like people are going to perceive it as more red tape, more steps to go through, government encroachment.
But it's not.
Yeah.
It's actually helping the city plan for future development, though. So I
see what you're saying.
We already have to review annexation, subdivision, and zoning applications against a growth policy. And so if we don't have this in the growth policy, how do you review a future annexation, subdivision, zoning request if you don't have a future land use map?
Yeah.
The problem that I have is so much of this is unbuildable land. So especially on the east, all the way down, down towards Bear Creek, that's really unbuildable land. And obviously this also includes the sewer ponds, includes the cemetery, includes large ranches. Now, true, the ranches might be at some point broken up, as people age out. But a lot of this is simply unbuildable because we're in a valley and we have benches on both sides, and you can't build on those benches because it sloughs. So.
Well, and if you'll see on my map, I identify quite a bit of that as open space ag, right? So I think those areas you're talking about, I have those identified as open space agricultural lands.
And we can mark this up, right, when it's shared, and we can.
Yep, and just because I have it drawn on here does not mean that's what it should be. I just wanted to start the discussion and give you guys some direction on what we need to do, right? I fully expect you to mark this up and tell me, no, you are way off base. So
Let's do this. Again, on that dotted line, I would make it 1 mile from the existing and not square it off like that, because that's what the current policy is, that within 1 mile of the city, the subdivision application has to come to us. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
That is correct, yes.
So I would make that dotted line a clear 1 mile from the current city limits. So it has the same shape. And then I would make copies of that map and send it to each of the planning board members so they can mark it up or change it up or make comments on specific areas that trouble them.
Do you want my, well, I'll just provide this map as well. So
Yeah.
you can see what my proposed, what my thoughts are on that future land use. And then we'll also provide you with a blank one that you guys can mark up and provide.
Do you want a blank one or you want?
I want a blank one, yeah. That's what I was gonna ask, because you can't really write on this toner. So if we had a blank one, that would be really, really helpful. And I think that we could easily, go through ones that we know are going to probably be annexed in the next 20 years. And those that may be annexed in the next 20 years.
Okay, let's do that. You send us this map with the 1 mile outline and then send us a blank one with a 1 mile outline. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I guess one other suggestion within that bigger area, there's parcels of BLM and state land. It might be worth
Waiting them out.
identifying the other public lands that are within that area. Just so we kind of gives a more complete picture that,
Can we do that, Jeremy?
Maybe we could just wipe them out so it's not conflicting with the other code, the classes.
Yeah,
Clearly
Kevin,
more.
if you could add that to that new map that's gonna show the planting area boundary. We'll just provide that on the blank map that shows those public lands.
We can do that. And I got one question I want to bounce off Jeremy real quick. So when we're adding this 1 mile buffer, though, a lot of the times it's going to be cutting through a parcel and separating it in half. Do we want to mirror the property lines? Because you can't really necessarily have one property that's going to be two different, land use classifications. So I don't know if we
Well, I
want to
think
wait
we're
until we
still-
mark it up.
I think we're still going to show the bigger area for the future land use map. We're just showing that buffer as the one mile planning area boundary on it. So I think that's okay. I think if that cuts through properties, we can always adjust it. I think when we see it, but I kind of envisioned it being this dashed line I have drawn on my map up here. On this side of town, it might be a little bit further than a mile because it's jagged, but I think on these sides it's a mile. So
The reason I want to stick to the mile is that's what the policy says.
We can outline current subdivisions, because you want them.
Sense, Jeremy, we can definitely do that.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, just do the mile and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, if there is I heard a statement that says that anything that's subdivided within the county in 1 mile, so it makes sense to show the mile, whether or not we cut it off there. Bill Bullock also said that there were 3 new subdivisions on just the east bench. I don't know where they were, but is the city getting those subdivision notifications?
They're sufficiently, they're like Roberts.
That's
so
like down by Robert.
They're
Yeah,
far
that's
away.
Or .com.
They're not adjacent and all
No.
around, okay.
So
Okay,
what about
all right, so we clear what we're gonna do. We're gonna get a copy of that map that you just, with a bigger expansion, with your recommendations, Jeremy.
Yep.
And then we're gonna get that map that's not colored so that the planning board members can color it for the areas that they feel that are different than yours.
Let's get an outline first, and then we can go ahead and play
Yeah.
around with it.
Right. Okay?
Yep, that's what we're gonna do. So
All right.
just to help with the discussion, I guess I'm just gonna throw out the question, would it be helpful to have Rita mention some examples from some communities of a similar size in terms of how they define their growth, their, future land use map, and what sorts of criteria or things items they use to evaluate what that extent should be?
I can send you one I just did for Libby, the city of Libby. I can send that one. Kevin, I would assume that you guys have some examples of future land use maps where you designated land uses within a planning area boundary.
Yeah, we have quite a few. I just opened up one for Deer Lodge. Theirs was a little bit different because the way that they wanted it, they wanted them specifically called annexation properties or areas. But we got plenty of examples.
Okay,
So
we got-
we'll send a couple examples your way as well.
all right, are you gonna send them to, Greg, and he's gonna distribute them to the planning board? And then, is that how we're gonna do this?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep. And again, like I said, I'm gonna be out of the office for the next week, but I will send my map to Greg. Kevin, if you could work on your map and get that to Greg. And I'll send the examples that I have to Greg, and we'll get all that stuff rounded up and sent over to you guys.
yeah, so send it all at once you get it all, okay? Are we up? Okay, for now?
Yeah.
I just think when we communicate this, language is important here, and we have to make it very clear that this is a plan, a forecast. It's not dictating. We can't use that word. We're not,
Long-term.
we're not controlling what it is. It's just a long-term idea.
It's a planning tool, right? And
Right.
so, I mean, a couple other things like, you know, when we get down the road, like, I think we want to simplify this legend and not show the zoning that's in the city of Red Lodge, because I think that's
Agreed.
going to imply to people that we're trying to zone the county when we're not. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think we need to take out our zoning designations, because I think that's going to confuse people, and they're going to think we're trying to zone them. And so
Because I think Reed brings up a point, is perception and sometimes is reality, and we need to be away from that.
They're gonna look at this as total overreach, and
Yeah.
I'm warning you now.
Well,
Well,
mean,
and they will. I mean, you're gonna get those people. I mean, it just,
Yeah,
I can tell you, the city
There's
of
a reason
Libby,
county and not the city.
the city of Libby's growth policy was derailed because of their future land use map. And they ended up adopting their growth policy without a future land use map. And then they came back later but they got some bad information, that they didn't have to have it. And then they had to come back later and actually adopt it separately from, because they really do have to have it. So it is a necessity for growth policy. But I can tell you more than one growth policy has been derailed because of a future land use map. So we do need to be careful. And I think some of the language on here, such as, you know, current zoning map, I think we need to just take the reference, any reference to zoning out of this.
I totally agree.
You know, it just needs to be planning area and future land uses or something like that, right?
All right.
But we can work on all that as we move forward. I think right now it's just a discussion with you guys, the planning board, and then before we disseminate this to the county or to any public, we will clean all that up.
Yeah. John, you had a comment?
No, you answered it.
Okay.
And we can get
You can hear.
there's gonna be summaries of, you know, what this is from the other cities and how they did it and how
Yeah.
they presented it. And if we can get examples of that, so that we're not totally, you know,
Right.
shooting in the dark with what our,
Yeah.
you know, what our explanation and summary of it is as well.
Well,
Because we're not the first ones to do it.
no.
Can we call it a possible future land use? Future land use sounds like it's
Like
going to
this
be
is
our
gonna happen,
future.
Yeah.
Possible is a different
Or
story.
maybe not the word but you know, yeah, the essence of that.
Maybe
For you.
potential future land uses.
Ooh, that's a good
Potential's
one.
good, yeah.
Okay, we got about 20 minutes. Jeremy, anything else you want to cover?
I mean, those were the things I wanted to get through as a future land use stuff. I don't know if you wanted to move into any other sections of the growth policy. A lot of the other sections going through this, again, are, requirements of a growth policy, such as the subdivision regulations and review section. These are all things that are required to be in a growth policy for reviewing a subdivision application. Public hearing procedures, same thing. Zoning ordinance, this is just talking about your zoning, public land. I mean, a lot of this is just information, like we talked about. And then again, getting into the next sections like local services. This is all just information. And so, I think, we've got your comments on these sections. I would say, maybe Kevin and I and Greg probably should just go through the comments that we have on this right now. And if we have any questions of the planning board on any of your comments, then maybe we just bring them back to the planning board rather than going through every single one of the comments.
Yeah, could we do this? As I've gone through this document and you've addressed most of the comments as we move to the end, Kevin, is it a time now where you could bring us, the second draft, and that we could, make another pass through it again, starting at the beginning?
I think so. I think, the minor things that we just need to clean up between us and, Jeremy and Greg, I think we can get that all taken care of and then get a second draft all ready to go here shortly. I don't know, Jeremy, with you being out of the office, when you would like to see that come through, or if you want me to just work with Greg on that, or.
Hang on for a second, because Teresa just raised her hand. She's got a couple things she wants to mention. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to remind you that I'll be passing in the comments that I talked about
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah,
And so I also had submitted a lot earlier, one of the first passes at the maps that were shared,
Yeah.
a lot of the markups on those,
Yeah.
and wondered when we're gonna get to those as well.
we talked about a lot of those graphs last meeting.
No, maps.
Oh, maps.
Kevin, did you get the comments on maps?
I don't think I did.
Okay, we'll get those to you, so those can get, Greg, can you get those to Kevin?
Yeah,
Yeah, so Greg, I'll resubmit them so you have them in one lunch, and then
okay.
later.
Because those comments on maps aren't on my copy here.
We didn't have any maps in the document that's been shared. They were separate.
All right, so do we want another meeting before we do a second draft, or we want them to do a second draft and that we can make sure our adjustments have been made and go through it?
Well, let's do this. Let's have at the next meeting, I think you guys should look at the future land use map. And I think you need to discuss that, try to get something solidified on that future land use map. And then talk about maybe the other maps and just make sure that there's no other comments on the other maps. Let's get that solidified, and then we'll get the second draft, final draft done for your complete review. That way that next draft includes the future land use map and any other updated maps.
Yeah, and those,
How's that sound?
yeah,
I
does
haven't-
everybody remember getting those
No,
maps
I
way,
don't.
way back?
No, could we
That's
send
okay.
out those maps again?
Yeah, I
Um,
don't remember those.
I don't remember those.
I think they came at the very beginning,
Yeah.
and Teresa was the only one that commented, and Kevin made a comment of a lot of these aren't
But the maps are in this draft.
already.
Well, there are maps
They're
distributed
attachments
through
in
there.
the appendix, I think, they're attachments,
Okay,
Can you resend them? please?
so I'll have Kevin send me fresh maps. and
Okay.
distribute them all.
all right,
Thank you.
Because I don't remember.
I don't.
okay.
I have a question, I guess. We haven't really discussed the section on land uses, so
Yeah.
are we gonna wait till and I've got a number of comments,
On the map,
And that's what
not
we
on the
are
map,
now.
on the section that says,
Page
starting on
36.
page 31.
Yeah. I've got
So-
those too.
Are we going to postpone those discussions until we get the second draft, or?
no, let's do it on the first one. Let's do it.
Yeah, we're not
Well, we
ready for
could-
a second draft.
Can you get through them in the next 10 or 15 minutes?
I don't think so.
I don't know, because some of them are related to
If you want to go back.
clarification in terms of,
Yeah,
what we want to bring forward from the current growth policy. It deals with the central business district, community entrances, primarily.
What page are you on?
Well, it's, you know, basically it's between page 31 and 35, which starts, or 35 begins with the future land use discussion, so.
I have future land use starting on 36.
Yeah, mine
Well,
does.
okay, what,
So he's under the first land use section, which is my 32 for some reason, but
Yeah,
but that's the first land use. I think this is talking about existing land uses.
Yes.
Before you get into the future land use section. So,
Way
and
back.
so under Central Business District, Jeff has a comment, says, should this be changed to 14th Street? The block between 14th and 15th is primary residential. East side includes a church, bed and breakfast, and bunkhouse apartments. The west side is all residential single-family homes.
basically that extends the central business district to the north one block, basically.
and you're doing that under central,
I would,
Page 31, Central Business District.
I've got it on page 37.
That's
Central
future. That's future. Go to page 31,
be 31.
and the title is Land Use.
This
So
is 14.
the page that says land use.
Just say land use with residential right under it.
Got it.
Yep, you're almost there, right here.
And
Well, I
should it be
think boiling down the comment, I think the question is, should 15th Street be changed to 14th Street?
Yeah.
Right? Is that what I got?
Right.
That's correct.
Well, that would be for the community entrance. The central business district starts at 14th Street, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I was suggesting, is that we adjust, don't extend the central business district. Wait a minute.
It should match.
Anyway, what I'm getting at is the community entrance on the south side has that block between 14th and 15th. That's the community church on one side, the bunkhouse on one side. And then on the west side is all single-family residential.
Yeah.
And that, to me, fits the idea of the central business transition zone better than central business district. So that's the essence of my suggestion, is basically a line, and I can't really see it on the maps that we have, but
Yeah.
So you want to change it from Fifth Street to,
15.
15th Street to 14th Street.
14th Street,
you want to change 15th to 14th?
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know, that does, I did have to zoom way in on that map, but, that's one of the comments I had on the other map, was that they didn't have C1 labeled correctly, which is, you know, 19th, was it 19th? And down to C1, this area that Jeff's talking about.
Okay.
So we have some discrepancies.
So what, are we going to change it to 14th,
I think we should.
Susan?
I think it's artificial at this point, but I think 14th is more traditional to what we have in our other
John?
documents.
Agreed.
Okay, can we make that change?
Okay, we got it.
All right, Jeff.
Next comment is on the next page under community entrance. It says, or eliminate industrial uses in favor of artisan uses. Would production of craft beers and spirits be considered artisan as opposed to light industrial? Also, reverse frontage requirements forces parking to the rear of the buildings, though reverse frontage should include street side building design features that looks like entrances not look like the back of buildings with utility services and lack of windows and doors facing the street. If intent is to encourage pedestrian bicycle pathways, then the street pathway side of buildings should be included. Should be include building front features as well. This was the original intent of the reverse frontage in the master plan and growth policies. So that's on this, this section right here of the
Right.
community entrances.
And I guess one thing is, I guess, through our conversations, we've always had this discussion about what kind of industrial uses do we want in the community entrances, and whether it's heavy, moderate, or light. And more recently, in our discussions have come up with this term called artisan uses, which could be related to Sam's Brewery and, or other kinds of uses like that, or whether that's considered light industrial, So I guess the discussion is what kinds of uses would be appropriate for our community entrances, now that we're kind of talking more about more mixed use, mixed commercial, residential. It seems to me moderate and heavy industrial would not necessarily be compatible with a mixed residential, commercial use, as much as, but artisan is a whole uses, or even light industry is a whole different concept in terms of scale and impact. That's one question, I guess, that I was getting at. The other is, as we've looked at how we've approved buildings in the north entrance with reverse frontage, we have allowed for all the utility services to be on the street side rather than be on the side of the building. And with the intent in the future is that there's going to be a bicycle pedestrian pathway out to 2 Mile Bridge. So I'm thinking from a design standpoint, you don't want the back of the, you want to have an entrance to the building from a street side. The intent of the reverse frontage was simply not to have a big expanse of parking lot facing 212. We wanted the parking behind on the back side of the building. That was the whole intent of the reverse frontage idea that was incorporated. That's been in our growth policy forever. So I guess where I'm going with that is just having a little bit more clarification in terms of what the vision and guidance is for the community entrances, specifically as it relates to the reverse frontage idea.
So maybe the sentence that's in there that says the city should review the zoning code and possibly amend the zoning to ensure that there are mitigation measures in place for industrial uses. What if we stopped it right there and not come up with, such as required landscape? In other words, making examples, because leave it at mitigation measures. Because this is just a sentence. It's got nothing to do with the in-depth zoning that we have. That could go ahead and get more specific and say that all the utilities need to be not visual from the road, somehow blocked or.
Yeah, well, I agree with that, but what I'm saying is the growth policy sort of sets the vision. So what I'm asking is, how can we not go into that kind of detail, but actually say the intent, what the intent of the reverse frontage is, and
Kevin or Jeremy, you have any ideas on how to address this?
Well, I was just gonna say, let me work with Kevin, and we'll just come up with some revised language for this that kind of, we'll review your comment again. I guess I understand kind of what you're getting at, and with your comment, and I think Kevin does too. So, Kevin and I can work on some revised language here and get that back to you.
Okay. Jeff?
That sounds good.
And move to page 35. Under north entrance and, you had a couple of comments under, northern entrance.
Well, this had to do with, well, two things, I guess. One was and this kind of goes to the future land use, discussion a little bit, because the east side of Highway 212 is in the county. And there's two parcels right now for sale. So we have, and this is a perfect example of potential conflict between the city
And county.
in the county, where the city has had a vision for its community entrances going back to 1994. And the potential is that on the county side, they could just basically ignore the whole idea of reverse frontage and the intent of where the city is going. So I don't know how we do that. My comment basically is we need to have a process where there's a discussion between the county and the city in terms of how we resolve these potential conflicts in between our desired land use and where the county is. And
So I think we can just add some discussion in here on coordinating with Carbon County, planning staff and planning board on, potential areas of annexation and conflict with city zoning or something like that. It's a really hard conversation. I'm just going to tell you, the city of Red Lodge can say, hey, this is what we want. The problem is the county doesn't have zoning. And so the county has no way of enforcing what you have as a vision in your zoning documents, right? Just because you say, this parcel adjacent to it's in the city and it's zoned this, and this is what's required, the county can't enforce that. So on properties unless they have zoning. And so you could certainly provide comment to the county, but at the end of the day, if the county doesn't have zoning, there's not a whole lot they can do, unfortunately. But I think we can add a sentence or two in here that just says, the city of Red Lodge will coordinate with Carbon County on, annexation and development of properties adjacent to the city limits along this corridor or something like that. One thing that might come into play in this area is that if city services are within 500 feet of these parcels, which I don't know if they are, then they're required to come to the city and request connection for water and sewer if they get developed, before they would be allowed to put in a septic system or a well. And so that might play into this discussion where they may end up being annexed for that reason. But again, those are coordination things between the county and the city, but we can just put some language in here for that, I think.
I have a weird question on that. The large parcel that's for sale along 212 on the east side, half is in the city limits and half is in the county. So
Really?
How does that work?
That's a good question. I mean, the half that's in the city is zoned. I guess the half that's out of the city is not, right? So that is a weird situation. Usually it's I'd be interested to find out how that happened, because I don't know how you annex a piece of property, half a piece of property. Usually they're annexed by legal description. So unless there was a boundary line relocation previously or after annexation that created part of it out of the city and part of it in the city, that's a weird one. I don't know.
Well, that's so big surprise.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a strange one. I'd be interested to see how that happened.
Okay, western entrance, Jeff? You had a comment there?
got comment on the northern entrance.
See, it looks like you had a comment on gaming, allowance of gaming that is casinos has been a controversial issue in the past. Is not allowed in community entrances until 2010, 2015 growth policy review, then was only allowed as a conditional use. That is not the primary purpose of a business. So are you just looking for clarification in this section on those points, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just thinking that needs a little bit more clarification, and what I was looking for, and this would apply to each of the entrances, is that to define what tertiary means, rather than just, having a little bit more clarification in terms of it. And our intent has been that tertiary means that it's an inferior use to the primary and secondary uses.
Right, okay. Yep, I think between Kevin and I, we can come up with some language there.
And I would strike the example that is hotels, restaurants. I would just leave it as defining what's meant by tertiary.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna weigh in on it.
What she said.
Okay, I think what we're gonna have to do, next meeting, Jeremy, is we'll start with a review of the land use map, and then we'll start it, and you're gonna send us the other maps?
Yep.
And, any discussion, I noticed there are some comments on future land use, not very many, but we'll probably cover those at our next meeting, Jeremy, okay?
Correct.
Okay, so next meeting, we're gonna review the land use map. We're gonna review the, maps that you're gonna send us. And then we're gonna take up on the future land use here on page 36. Okay? Okay, Jeremy, and our next meeting is on, September 25th.
Yep.
And you and Kevin are available for that meeting on Zoom?
Unfortunately, I have a conflict that night. That's been planned for quite some time, so I guess I'm hoping that I can coach Greg and Kevin and they can
Okay,
take comments. But
Okay.
we can discuss that more when I'm there the 19th.
okay. Kevin, are you good on the 25th?
That's your point.
That date works for me.
What did he say?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah,
It's good.
Sounds good, Al.
all right. Okay, thanks, guys. We got a couple of things to cover here, but I think we're done with, growth policy for tonight. I think we got something accomplished, and it's gonna be a little harder than I thought, but we'll get there.
Sounds good.
Always.
Yeah, I kind of figured this future land use map discussion was gonna carry over to at least one more meeting. so-
Well, I think Marie is set on it. There's a perception of the relationship between the county and the city and the overreach, and it's just an issue that we need to deal with, and we will, so.
Yeah, I see the point, but I also see the future issue of
Yeah.
people getting real riled up because word travels in this town. If they don't know the truth, they'll make it up.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
part of it,
and that's, like I said before, it's an issue. It's been an issue, for other communities around the state for years. There's always a small group of people that typically blow it out of proportion and claim that the city is gonna annex us and zone us and do all this other stuff when that's not the case, so, but
it's gonna test our communication skills, and I think we've got them here, and we'll get it done. I think we have a good understanding with Bill Bullock for sure, and that's probably where I'd start, so.
Well,
we'll go from-
perhaps too, I thought maybe we could get like a group of 4 of us to ask to be on the next county planning
Yeah.
board's agenda, and we could nicely go with hat in hand and kind of give them an
You mean
explanation.
just pave the way?
Yeah.
But kind
It
of, don't
came
just
to our
bomb them, just be
explain,
like,
right.
No,
hey.
That we
But I
apparently
think
have
Bill
to
and I have
have-
already
can
started that,
coordinate.
we've had those types of conversations, but yeah, we'll figure
They'll
that
let,
out.
you know, it's
Yeah.
all about,
We're
you're
gonna
right, the
send Maria
delivery.
alone.
Yeah.
We're gonna send her in alone.
Okay,
Well,
thanks,
you can
Jeremy.
send me in
All
alone,
right,
I'm gonna.
thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All right.
Good night.
Cause I'll be like, I didn't do it
Staff
either.
communication and
I
updates.
didn't like it
Uh,
myself.
our next meeting's on the 25th.
Yeah, 25th,
Do we have anything other than growth policy?
nothing on the agenda.
Good.
God, put something on there.
So we don't have to.
Seriously.
No, we gotta get
We
this
have to
done.
get this done.
We gotta get,
Gotta get it done, gotta get
we're
it done.
getting close.
Government and action.
We're not.
Okay, and now, on the 19th, everybody's seen the schedule for the 19th,
Yes,
and hopefully,
next Thursday.
yeah, and the third session is a little bit conflicted for me, but we'll figure that out, but if some of us could be at those sessions, that would be good. I'm not sure what role we'll play, if any, we'll just be there to answer any questions that come our way. We won't have any official role. It's gonna be run by Jeremy and Kevin, right?
I can be at all three.
Huh?
I can be at all three.
Story.
Okay,
Yeah, I think Jeremy will answer general questions.
yeah.
Planning, Jim and Chad from
Yeah,
Great West.
just as I said, I don't want this to be the Wild Wild West. I want it to be professional. I want to give everybody a chance to say their piece. I think the first part of the meeting should be focused on the stakeholders and have that conversation, and then the second part of the meeting be opened up and let it go. That's,
Yeah,
okay,
we can, I'll give Chad a call too and
yeah.
relay all that again,
And
so.
keep us in the loop so we make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
There's one of the forums that we did, what was the one that was, it was just kind of the Wild Wild West there? It wasn't the Beartooth Forum, it was the one before that where there was no really direction and,
Well, that was aging in place before that, but I thought that was a good
Yeah.
one.
anyway.
She liked it.
And so on, Courtney and
Don't know what
Cody
you're
did.
talking about.
Oh, yeah,
There was
well,
no
it
light.
wasn't, I mean, it wasn't very
No
well.
food fight.
Exactly.
I'm sure it was.
Okay. All right, any petitions or communications from the audience, Dave?
Dave.
Our audience has left.
I've got Angela there or whatever her name.
Anything online, raise your hand or come off mute if you'd like to talk.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ange.
We appear good.
Okay,
Oh, I thought that was your.
other
thought so,
business,
too. It sounded like dismissed to me.
well, I'll wait and bring that up later. All
No,
right.
don't leave us hanging.
Yeah, we're past our time, so.
I'm with her.
Yeah, now I'm like
I have to
waited.
live on this edge, on this cliff.
No, I've been the chair of this now for almost 5 years, 4
And you're
years.
doing a great
Let's,
job.
let's go ahead and wait and let's take this
And,
till next
and
time.
I just think you need to start thinking about a plan of succession.
No plans.
Anybody's interested, obviously Jeff, but I think we need to start processing that so it's not a surprise to anybody.
I think we need time to process.
That's why I'm asking you to start thinking about it. Okay?
Thank you.
Any, other business?
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
I won't be able to go Thursday.